Does it show any sign of having actually been used in battle, or is it ceremonial?
No, no. And in fact, one issue I've even gone into, it may be composite. These plates seem to have been set into a male shirt, but not necessarily when it began life in the early 17th century, but rather later. There's a long tradition of reuse in India.
Any other questions? Retrospectively, prospectively, all done? Thank you all very much. There's no question that knowledge is the engine that makes a museum work. The expertise of our curators is, in a sense, our most valuable currency. It also is the element that provides me, when I make a judgment, with the comfort to reinforce my own convictions about an object.
In 1989, this monumental landscape by Jericho was selected during the dry run for the ultimate challenge, presentation to the Board of Trustees.
Jericho communicated through scale. His paintings were, for their day, absolutely enormous and outsized, so it was important for us to get a big work by Jericho.
But Jericho was known for his emotional figure paintings, not his landscapes. This was not his typical style, and the Met's trustees were not impressed.
Philippe came right up to me just a second before I was about to speak and said, "This isn't going to fly. They don't like it. So don't pin your hopes on this work." So I took a deep breath and I gave it everything I had, trying to persuade the trustees that this may not be what they think of Jericho. This may not be a work that they want to hang in their own houses.
And surprisingly, the trustees said,
"If the director, the departmental chairman, and the curator of French painting say that this is a capital work that we must acquire, who are we to disagree with them?" And with that withering statement, approval was given, and in fact we were able to get it for a pittance, for a very small sum compared to the value of it in the history of art.
There are many ways that works of art come to the attention of the Met scholars, and many paths that lead to acquisition. Sometimes it's curatorial sleuthing, and sometimes serendipity. Acquired in 1981, this large and imposing work by the great Flemish Baroque artist Peter Paul Rubens is, at the same time, a very intimate portrait.
It is, in fact, a self-portrait with his new young wife, Hélène Fourment, and one of their children.
It was actually one of a pair in the Rothschild collection in Paris. But when the Rothschilds decided to sell the two paintings, the French government insisted that one stay in France. The Louvre had first pick.
And I'm delighted to say, while the picture that the Louvre chose is a wonderful painting, had we been given the original choice, we actually would have chosen the one we ultimately got. So everybody won.
Sometimes the only justification for acquiring a piece of art rests in the eye of the beholder.
This is a work which came up at an auction a few years ago, and there was absolutely no information about it. It said possibly 17th or 18th century. Nobody had any idea of the country in which it was made, of who the sitter was, or who the artist might be. And this is one instance where you rely on intuition based on the saturation of the eye. And I said, we ought to buy it. And they said, well, you know, we know nothing about it. I said, look, you have an eternity to find out about it. But first, we have to get in the collection.
It was only 5 years. I looked through the portraits, through coins, to find who he could be, because his features are quite distinguished.
Eventually, curator Wolfram Kappe found these images, which were key to identifying the subject. The Russian statesman Alexander Menshikov.
Alexander Menshikov was a close friend of Peter the Great. Menshikov actually was the one who drove the Swedes out of the area which is today called St. Petersburg. And Peter the Great made him the first governor of St. Petersburg in 1703.
The interesting thing in terms of price and acquisition at auction, had the name of the sitter been known, we would never have been able to compete against the Russian oligarchs or even museums. We still don't know by whom or where, but we're well on the way.
When the museum acquires a work of art, it's the beginning, not the end, of the discovery process. Philippe de Montebello liked to say that 100% of what the public wants to see is on display at the Metropolitan Museum of Art at any given time. But that doesn't mean that all 2 million pieces of art are always on view in the galleries. Storage is an important consideration. Some of the most fragile works in the museum's collections are the textiles. Moving them is a ballet that combines delicacy with precision, as they're brought from storage in the museum's Antonio Ratti Textile Center to the conservators who will prepare them for display.
We can mount the panel.
Christina Carr and Florica Zaharia are beginning work on the first of a pair of exquisite 18th century French tapestries acquired by the museum in 2006.
The maximum, I guess, combination of every single color in this panel is in those little butterflies.
Yeah. And then this is nice too with the...
For more than 200 years, these extraordinary panels languished behind the scenes in a king's pleasure palace.
This was part of a large and complicated commission for the Spanish king, Carlos IV, who was decorating a small rural palace about an hour outside of Madrid. Well, about an hour in modern times. The pieces really exemplified the highest quality of silk design and execution at this period. The 2 panels have never been used, or if they were used for a very short time. So the unusual and very rare characteristic of these panels is that they are almost completely unfaded. They're in practically pristine condition.
Not all works of art arrive at the museum in pristine condition. Age and handling and improper care before the museum acquired them may leave them less than perfectly preserved. As director, Philippe de Montebello completely revamped the museum's